Masai Ujiri stepped to the podium with a message no one expected. "I hope to bring calm." Just 4 simple words opened his first press conference in Dallas. There were no bold championship guarantees, no flashy declarations, and no grand promises about what the future might hold. Instead, he chose restraint, setting a noticeably different tone from the very beginning.
But Coop's got it now. And here's Coop on the drive. And this is all it takes now to turn things around.
For a franchise that has spent the better part of a year trapped in non-stop chaos, those 4 words were exactly what Dallas needed to hear. Fans had watched the organization unravel from the inside out, and at long last, the sweeping changes they had been demanding finally arrived. The general manager was gone, the head coach was out, and even the owner whose decisions helped fuel the turmoil had quietly stepped away from the spotlight. It felt less like another off-season, and more like the closing chapter of an era that had completely lost its way. Before you can rebuild a roster, you first have to rebuild the people responsible for creating it. Every championship contender starts with leadership that shares a clear vision, and Dallas simply didn't have that anymore. Cleaning house was an important first step, but tearing everything down doesn't automatically create a brighter future. A reset only matters if the people taking over know exactly where they are trying to go and have the patience to follow that path. That direction finally started to reveal itself on draft night. While the headlines focused elsewhere, the Mavericks quietly connected every piece of their long-term plan. Instead of chasing quick fixes or flashy headlines, they committed to a complete organizational overhaul. This is a story of how Dallas transformed from the NBA's biggest punchline into one of the league's most fascinating rebuilding projects, giving fans a legitimate reason to believe that better days could finally be ahead. The Nico Harrison era officially came to an end in November 2025 after Dallas stumbled to a disappointing 3-8 start. But the record was only part of the problem. The Luka Doncic trade still hung over the franchise like a dark cloud, poisoning nearly every conversation surrounding the team. What had once been a frustrated fan base had evolved into full-blown outrage, and after everything they'd witnessed over the previous year, it was hard to argue that those emotions weren't completely justified. Dallas had gone from representing the Western Conference in the NBA Finals to becoming the cautionary tale everyone around the league pointed to. Trading away one of the 5 best players on the planet handed the Lakers an entirely new future while stripping the Mavericks of the identity they had spent years building. Los Angeles suddenly looked rejuvenated, while Dallas was left searching for answers after making one of the most controversial decisions in recent NBA history. Winning the draft lottery and landing Cooper Flagg certainly softened the blow, but it didn't erase the mistakes that made the opportunity necessary in the first place. One incredible stroke of luck couldn't rewrite the previous year or convince fans to forget how the franchise had arrived at this point. The front office spent months stuck between competing and rebuilding, unable to fully commit to either direction as uncertainty surrounded every major decision. Then everything changed on May 4th. Dallas made the move that immediately restored a measure of credibility by hiring Masai Ujiri as president of basketball operations and alternate governor. Around the NBA, few executives carry a stronger reputation for leadership, talent evaluation, and organizational culture. Bringing him to Dallas wasn't simply another front office hire. It was a statement that the Mavericks intended to rebuild the franchise the right way from the top down. Ujiri arrived with one of the most respected resumes in professional basketball. During his 12-year run leading Toronto, he transformed the Raptors into one of the league's model organizations, guiding them to 8 playoff appearances and delivering the only NBA championship in franchise history in 2019. His reputation wasn't built on flashy headlines or impulsive decisions. It came from consistently building competitive teams, developing overlooked talent, and establishing a culture that players genuinely wanted to be part of. Dallas also made sure this wasn't a rushed decision. Reports indicated that Governor Patrick Dumont explored several accomplished executives, including Bob Myers and Tim Connolly, before ultimately deciding that Ujiri was the right person to oversee the franchise's future. The search was thorough because the stakes couldn't have been higher, and by the time the process ended, the Mavericks believed they had found a leader capable of restoring stability to one of the NBA's most turbulent organizations. From the moment Masai Ujiri walked through the doors, the atmosphere around the franchise felt noticeably different. His greatest strength has never been limited to scouting reports or trade negotiations. It's his ability to connect with people. Whether it's speaking to players, coaches, employees, or passionate fans. He understands what they are feeling because he communicates with honesty and empathy rather than corporate cliches. That authenticity has defined his career and quickly began reshaping the tone in Dallas. That's why the quote everyone remembered from his introductory press conference wasn't about championships or banners hanging from the rafters. Instead, it was just 4 simple words: "I hope to bring calm." Those words perfectly captured what the Mavericks had been missing for months. After endless controversy, public criticism, and organizational dysfunction, Dallas finally had a leader who understood that rebuilding trust had to come before rebuilding a championship roster. The Luka Doncic trade didn't just damage the Mavericks on the basketball court. It fractured the relationship between the franchise and its supporters. The front office convinced itself that prioritizing defense justified moving a generational superstar, while ownership underestimated what Luka represented to the city beyond his production on the floor. He wasn't merely the team's best player. He had become the face of basketball in Dallas. Ujiri couldn't erase that pain overnight, but by acknowledging it instead of ignoring it, he took the first meaningful step toward owning back the confidence the organization had lost. That ability to understand people wasn't something Masai Ujiri suddenly developed overnight. It had been the foundation of everything he accomplished in Toronto. While plenty of executives can identify talented prospects, Ujiri built his reputation by creating an environment where those players consistently exceeded expectations. Pascal Siakam, OG Anunoby, and Fred VanVleet weren't viewed as future stars when they entered the league, yet under Toronto's culture, each evolved into a cornerstone piece. Finding talent is only half the challenge in the NBA. The other half is building a system that allows that talent to flourish, and that's exactly the culture Ujiri now hopes to establish in Dallas. He wasted very little time assembling the people he trusted to help make that vision a reality. Less than a week after officially taking over basketball operations, Ujiri hired Mike Schmitz as the Mavericks' new general manager. It was another move that reflected long-term thinking rather than short-term publicity. Instead of searching for the biggest name available, Dallas targeted one of basketball's most respected talent evaluators, someone whose reputation had been built through years of studying prospects, identifying hidden value, and understanding how successful teams are constructed from the ground up. Schmitz first became well known through Draft Express, where his detailed scouting reports and player evaluations earned widespread respect throughout basketball circles. His work eventually led him to ESPN, where he established himself as one of the most trusted voices covering the NBA draft. But in 2022, he left the media world behind and stepped directly into an NBA front office, joining the Portland Trail Blazers as an assistant general manager. That transition allowed him to apply years of scouting knowledge to real organizational decision-making. While Portland didn't hit on every move during Schmitz's time there, his influence was widely recognized across the league. He played an important role in acquiring Denny Avdija, who later developed into an all-star while continuing to validate Schmitz's reputation as one of basketball's sharpest evaluators. Around NBA front offices, executives consistently praised his preparation, attention to detail, and ability to project how young players would develop years before everyone else caught on. Those qualities made him an ideal partner for Ujiri's rebuilding vision. That's exactly why Ujiri wanted him in Dallas. Building around a young franchise cornerstone requires more than simply drafting well. It demands patience, evaluation, and the discipline to make decisions that benefit the organization years into the future rather than chasing immediate headlines. Schmitz's background made him uniquely qualified for that responsibility, giving the Mavericks another respected basketball mind to help shape the next era of the franchise. When Schmitz was asked what excited him most about joining Dallas, his answer came without even a moment of hesitation: Cooper Flagg. More specifically, it wasn't just Flagg's impressive statistics that caught his attention during his rookie season. It was the way the teenager consistently influenced winning. Even against experienced NBA veterans, Flagg displayed a level of maturity, decision-making, and competitiveness that usually takes several seasons to develop, making his impact impossible to ignore. Most number 1 overall picks spend their first few years learning how to contribute to meaningful basketball. The physical tools are usually obvious, but understanding how to consistently affect winning often comes much later. Flagg looked different almost immediately. His instincts on defense, his feel for the game, his basketball IQ, and the countless small habits that veteran players spend years developing were already visible from the opening months of his rookie campaign. That level of polish separated him from nearly every young star who came before him. Putting up impressive numbers at just 19 years old is certainly rare, but helping your team compete while doing it is even more remarkable. That's a difference Schmitz kept emphasizing whenever he discussed Flagg's game. He wasn't simply filling up the stat sheet. He was making the right reads, elevating teammates, protecting possessions, and impacting both ends of the floor in ways that don't always appear in traditional box scores. In Schmitz's eyes, those qualities are what define a true franchise player. For years, Ujiri built Toronto around one simple message: we will win in Toronto. It wasn't designed as a catchy slogan or marketing campaign. It became the philosophy that guided every decision the Raptors made, from player development to roster construction. Eventually, that belief was rewarded with a 2019 NBA championship, proving that sustained culture and patience could overcome even the league's toughest obstacles. When Dallas officially introduced Ujiri as president of basketball operations, the final line of the press release carried a familiar message: we will win in Dallas. It immediately reminded longtime NBA fans of the promise that had defined his tenure in Toronto. Whether that promise ultimately leads to another championship remains uncertain, but for the first time in a long while, the Mavericks appeared to have a leadership group with a clear vision, a unified direction, and a genuine plan for building something that can last well beyond a single season. Of course, believing in the plan and actually completing it are two very different things. Even Ujiri admitted there are no shortcuts in today's NBA, where nearly every team is searching for the same championship dream. Still, having a player like Cooper Flagg gives Dallas something every rebuilding franchise desperately wants: a legitimate foundation. And judging by everything he accomplished during his rookie season, it's becoming increasingly difficult to view him as anything less than a generational talent capable of changing an entire organization. Flagg didn't simply live up to the enormous expectations that followed him into the league. He exceeded them. As a rookie, he became the first-year player since Michael Jordan to lead his team in points, rebounds, assists, and steals, an achievement that immediately placed him in historically elite company. He also joined Jason Kidd and Luka Doncic as only the third Maverick ever to win the NBA Rookie of the Year award, adding another milestone to what was already one of the most remarkable debut seasons in recent memory. And somehow, the accomplishments only became more unbelievable as the season unfolded. At just 19 years old, Flagg became the youngest player, and the only teenager in NBA history, to score 50 points in a game, exploding for 51 against Orlando. Performances like that aren't supposed to happen this early in a career. They are usually reserved for established superstars in their prime, yet Flagg was already rewriting record books before celebrating his 20th birthday. His historic run didn't stop there. Flagg became the first rookie since Michael Jordan in 1985 to record 4 consecutive games with at least 30 points and 5 rebounds. Soon afterward, he became the first rookie since Allen Iverson in 1997 to score 150 points across a 4-game stretch. Each passing week seemed to bring another headline, another milestone, and another reminder that the Mavericks had landed a player capable of doing things very few athletes in NBA history had ever accomplished. The records continued piling up. Flagg set the NBA mark for the most 40-point games ever recorded by a teenager with 4, further separating himself from every young player who came before him. He also became the first rookie since Luka Doncic to receive All-NBA votes, an honor almost never given to first-year players. At only 19 years old, the word generational no longer sounded like media hype. It was beginning to feel like the most accurate description possible. The real issue wasn't Cooper Flagg. It was everything surrounding him. Despite his incredible production, Dallas still finished the season with a disappointing 26-56 record, ending just 4 losses away from owning the worst record in the entire Western Conference. One extraordinary young star wasn't enough to overcome the instability, injuries, and lack of depth that plagued the roster from opening night through the final game of the season. Anthony Davis battled injuries for much of the year before eventually being traded to Washington at the deadline, eliminating yet another experienced piece from an already struggling roster. Lineup changes became a constant theme. Chemistry never had an opportunity to develop, and the Mavericks spent more time trying to survive each week than seriously competing for a postseason spot. Instead of chasing wins, the season gradually transformed into an extended evaluation of which players truly belonged in the organization's future. Ironically, those difficult months may have provided the clarity Dallas desperately needed. Every setback reinforced the same conclusion. Replacing executives alone wouldn't solve the franchise's deeper problems. Ujiri inherited an organization that required change at nearly every level, from leadership and player development to the overall culture inside the building. The failures of the previous season simply confirmed that a complete reset, not a partial one, was the only realistic path forward. That realization quickly extended beyond the front office. Changing the people making decisions was only the beginning. If the Mavericks wanted to establish a completely different identity, the transformation also had to reach the coaching staff, player development department, and every corner of the organization. Ujiri understood that sustainable contenders aren't built through one headline-making transaction. They are created through years of consistent leadership, smart decision-making, and a culture that players genuinely believe in. For Dallas, that journey was only just beginning.